This morning I'm here, it's Tuesday morning, and I'm here in the library at our church with Miss Betty Cole and Bob and Nadine Simpson, who have been missionaries for a very long time in different places and who now are serving on our missions committee here at our church. But today I wanted to ask them a few questions that might help us all understand missions from a little broader perspective. So we'll start with Miss Betty, and just want you to tell us how you wound up on the mission field in Taiwan for 30 years. Tell us that story.
Well, my husband was from a mission family in China. And of course, they couldn't stay there. And he was getting a doctor's degree in counseling. And the government needed people to go to Taiwan to help set up a retirement program for their servicemen. And we went, we were called. And while there, we got interested in the Methodist Church because he was from that background, you know. And we had 1 year with the government, and that was up, and we stayed on to teach at a newly constructed Christian college, Donghai University. So we had 1 year there, and while there we were under the United Board of Christian Education, and then the Methodists picked us up.
Wow.
And we went back to the States where he got his degree, and ministerial degree, and we went back and we stayed on.
Wow. For a total of 30 years.
Yeah.
And 3 months.
33 years and 3 months.
33 years and 3 months. Okay, that's great. That's great. Well, thank you for sharing that. And Bob and Nadine, tell us about you. You were in Africa for 20 years. So tell us about that.
Yes. Well, you wanted to know, first of all, why we decided to go into missions. And
Right.
I was rather young child, I think. My father was a Methodist minister, and we had missionaries coming to the church to speak, and there was a missionary from China who was there, and I was thinking, well, really, that might be something I would want to do. And then I was reading books about David Livingstone and several other missionaries, and thinking, well, Africa really would be where I would like to go. But then somebody else from India, and so I didn't know. But I went to Emory and Henry College in southwestern Virginia, and got into the Christian student movement, and then these things began to firm up. I met Nadine in Chicago, and she, I'm not going into our love story, but anyway, we got married along the way, and she wanted to be a missionary as well. So we didn't know exactly where we were going, and we were assigned to Mozambique. But we couldn't get into Mozambique because of the political situation at that time. And so we were sent to Liberia, and then we worked there for how many months?
9 months at
9
first.
months in Liberia. And this gave us an opportunity to get accustomed to what missionaries did and what it was all about. And I think that was very good. I had to take the course in tropical medicine in Lisbon in order to work in Mozambique, which was a Portuguese colony at that time. And we had applied to get into Lisbon for a study visa, and they wouldn't give it to us because of the political situation and the United States, communists moving into Mozambique and this sort of thing. And so we went to Lisbon, Portugal, and I took the course in tropical medicine. And that was very good because we were studying Portuguese, but you wouldn't get the medical vocabulary just studying Portuguese, but I did in the tropical medicine course. Right. And so we finally got permission to go into Mozambique if we would just treat leprosy patients, because there was a leprosarium there, and I had had a course in leprosy, and I put that in my application, and they didn't want to work with leprosy patients, so they let us in.
They were glad for you to do that.
Yes, they were glad for me to do that. So we got in there, and then I started seeing leprosy patients because we had a leprosarium, and a lot of the Portuguese residents would come in for medical consultation, and I would say, I can't see you. And then they started making noise down in Lourenço Marques, the capital. This missionary up there won't treat us. And they were getting angry. And so I went down to the Minister of Health. I was asked to go down there, and he said, "Why aren't you treating patients up there?" And I said, "Because I was told just to treat leprosy patients." And he said, "Well, you can treat anybody. Why wouldn't you?" And so that's the way we were able to get into the full service of
Right.
treating the sick people. There was a small hospital which was totally inadequate, and we soon had patients on mats out under the trees with hanging up an IV bottle from a tree. Wow. And so we built a hospital. Right. And we finally ended up with a 100-bed hospital, and we usually had about 120 patients in there, and so a lot of them were on the floor. But it was just a tremendous amount of work, and we had missionaries, and we had a nurses training school, and these nurses from our training school were much better trained than the government nurses, and so they were in a demand all over the country to work. Right. And so we had other doctors come in, and it's now one of the major rural hospitals in the country.
Wow. I think it was something you told me a few weeks ago. Something you told me a few weeks ago was that you went into medical school so that you would have something to do on the mission field. You chose to do that.
Well, yes, because I was going to be a missionary, and I thought, well, after having read about David Livingstone and some of these other, what about all these sick people around? And I thought, well, I probably better go to medical school, and I was on the GI Bill. Right. And so I saved my GI Bill till I got to medical school.
I think most people go to medical school and then decide to be a missionary instead of deciding to be a missionary and then going to medical school.
Yeah. Well, I thought I would go to medical school and then after that go to theological school. But when I got in medical school, I realized that was it. I didn't need to go anywhere else.
Right. That's great.
Yeah, and the training we had to take in order to do the type of work that we did. Actually, I ended up having 6 years of medical residency and university training after medical school to get all this training in.
Wow, that's a lot of school.
And so I operated mostly in surgery, but also everything else in general surgery, brain surgery, chest surgery, orthopedic surgery, every kind, because our hospital was the tertiary unit in which everybody else sent patients.
Right. That's great. And Miss Nadine, you had a broken arm when you first met him, right? And that he flirted with you over that broken arm. That's only a doctor can flirt like that. So, tell us. You obviously did medical work on the mission field. What was it that was so important to you that you stayed with that for 20 years?
Well, actually, this was a real privilege for us to do that type of work, because there was so great a need for medical work, and people coming in with pathetic conditions which we could help with surgery. You know, we did a tremendous amount of surgery. We would do 12, 14, 20 cases in one day. You know, if at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, if I had 6 more hernias to do, I could be through by 9.
Oh my goodness.
And then after doing that, often we called at night to be up all night doing a cesarean section or
Wow.
some other
So
emergency.
the need was so great.
It was so great.
And
Yes.
that's what gave meaning to what you were.
That's right, and it
Yeah.
was really great that we could help these people.
Right. Miss Betty,
Yes.
you taught. You were a teacher.
Teachers,
Right.
right. Teaching English. as a
Teaching
sec-
English as a second language. Okay.
Right.
What gave that such meaning for you to stay for 33 and a third years?
I think the students.
Okay.
During that first year at Dung High, we had students from the seminary that were taking our classes, and I had, of course, some in my class, and one of them eventually became the head of our seminary. So through
Wow.
the years, you know, I saw him as a student, and then later on as the boss, and
Right.
so that was fun. And the students were from all ages. I mean, I had the seminary students at first, and for my last 10 years, I was back at Dung High teaching college students. And at the seminary, I also taught college students at night at the State University. And the students would ask me sometimes to come and teach their Sunday school children, all ages. And weekends they'd have teenagers come for English, and they'd ask me to come in and help on that.
Mhm.
So there was always something to do.
And you felt
all
like
ages.
that's where God called you,
Right.
and it felt good to be there.
Right.
Wow, that's great. I want to ask all three of you this final question, which is, what does the mission field look like for today's church? What does the mission field look like today, in your mind?
Well, we were working to train African leaders, and they went to university there, and then to Europe and to United States, and this often was subsidized by the churches here.
Mm-hmm.
And now they are back in Africa doing those jobs that we did, and we feel like that is a success. And the bishops, district superintendents, the pastors, are all African,
Right.
and
So you worked
some
yourselves
that-
out of a job.
That's right.
Okay. That's great. So where does the church go today? Where's our calling today?
Well, those needs are still there. Financial needs. There's not as much emphasis on mission work now that we don't send missionaries out there and have to support them. And so it's more difficult to get the financial support. So I think the church needs to continue to support the mission through the mission board.
Right.
These hospitals and
Right.
and schools and
That work is continuing, but
that
it's
work is
indigenous to
continuing.
the communities
indigenous
there.
leaders, but they really have difficulty
Right.
finding the funds.
Miss Nadine, what do you think?
But I was thinking of one of my good memories. The reason that I got interested in missions was partly due to an instructor named Bob Laubach, and you know his
Right.
father was Frank Laubach, who taught people to read. But Bob Laubach said, well, but they need something to read. They need material, simple material that they can understand. And about the time that we were needing to leave Mozambique, I remember a group of women seated outside near the church, and they were so happy because they could now read the Bible.
Wow.
That was why one of them was my washerwoman, and that was what the UMW did of an
Right.
afternoon.
Well, Nadine got a master's degree in journalism from Syracuse University.
Okay.
So she did most of the correspondence and writing stories about the mission work to send to publications and so forth.
That's great.
So she, in addition to that, we had 4 children, and 3 of them were born in Mozambique.
2 of them.
I mean, 2 of them were born in Mozambique, 1 in Lisbon, Portugal.
Okay. That's
So,
a full-time job there.
I'm a Native American, or we are, and one child is Hispanic American because he was born in Portugal, and the other 2 are African Americans. They were born in Africa.
That's great. Multicultural family. Miss Betty, what do you think? What does the mission field look like today?
Well, Taiwan now has no missionaries from our mission board, and we worked ourselves out of mission.
Mm-hmm.
But we still support the people there. We have friends there. One of my missionary colleagues retired, and she stayed on in Taiwan. That's where she was going to retire, and she
Okay.
retired there. And our church, our bishops, we have term bishops, and they've all come, or they've been former students of mine.
Okay.
And we worked ourselves, out of our jobs.
Right.
Well, I suppose they still could use people, but they would go under themselves
Right.
to teach
Right.
over there. Mhm.
Right. Thank you all so much for sharing this with us. It's great. Thank you.